Welcome learners. In the last session, what we have tried to understand is how to go about the app architecture, and in this session, we're going to talk about models. Models represent data. For example, when you saw the product JSON, it had title, price, and all the different components inside the JSON. They have to be constructed from the JSON into a Dart which we can use into our app. What exactly goes behind creating those, and in fact a good shortcut method we're going to discuss in the entire session. More upon, we will be discussing our API repository which will help us to get the data. More in details, let's see into our session. Let's dive into the session wherein I'm going to define the folder structure that we would be following and also giving you shortcuts on which you can create your models. So here's my app which we created in the last session. Now this is the default app, and when I try to run, it shows me this traditional counter. What I'm going to next do is create over here my directories for model, followed by view, and followed by view model. Well, this exactly is the thing that we have been discussing even in the architecture part, wherein now inside model, the very first thing is I'm going to create something called as a product model. Well, what's a product model? Heading over to the API, if you would remember, in the last session, I told you that if I just open this URL, it's going to give me a bunch of all the products. If I just put any number in front of it, for example 1, and it's going to load only one product which is having an ID to be 1. Now what I'm going to show to you is how this entire JSON that is been there into your server, we will be converting into Dart format. And now I'm going to introduce to you to JSON to Dart, and you'll find a lot of online tools that can help you do it very quickly. So here's my favorite JSON to Dart, which is being hosted over here, and I'll take this particular JSON, copy it, and go to the left side tab and click on once I do a paste, and then click on generate Dart. What do you notice is it actually gave me an entire code along with something called as fromJson and something called as toJson. Well, what I'm going to show to you is the importance of this fromJson and toJson, that too when we are trying to use the API. The moment I scroll down, I also notice there is a class rating. Well, how did this thing come up? When I go to the entire data which is over here, let me try now opening just one of them on JSON viewer, and then when I do a paste, you'll notice this has got ID, title, etc, etc, followed by rating. When I expand the rating, I get two variables which says what has been the rating for this particular backpack product and what is the number of count of this product being left out. Well, this JSON to Dart is actually quite smart. That's because it gave me one auto-generated class which is basically my product model, followed by a rating which actually has my rating model. What I'm going to next do is over here I'll begin copying this rating model, and in the new.dart file I'll create rating underscore model. I'll paste this and I'll rename this to rating model. Well, I kind of is a person who would always call a particular model and I'll append it with model. That's because I would later on forget what exactly was this rating class, and hence that would be a kind of a long time taking process for me to recollect the information. Hence, what I also advise you, if you are a person who's also a bit forgetful, in that case, try to use the model word when you're trying to create your models. Let me just have all the models being created. So this represents only the two variables, that is rate and count. In fact, it's been neatly formatted as it also has got this question mark, which kind of makes these variables to be initially null. Now, what I know is I can copy this class auto generated and then I'll put this in the product model over here, renaming this as product model. I'll paste it over here, followed by here. This is going to be rating model. Let me take the import for this and even change it to rating model here. What do I notice is the error goes away along with these changes. The model part was very well being done and it was kind of easy. Now what I'm going to do is begin the code for this level of my diagram, where my app is going to go to the server and request the data from the server. In that case, what I'm going to create is inside the view model, I'll have a repository to be the directory, and inside repository I'm going to create product repository. Well, what's exactly a product repository? Now what I'm going to try and do is this request. What I would rather not to do is dumping the code at one single place. Hence, this request as well as this response I'm going to put within the class product repository. This would kind of help me in segregating the logic amongst different classes and not to dump at one single place. Now, in the lib directory, I would now also want to have a base, and I'm going to create logger utils. If you have been following my videos, then this class logger utils is going to be helpful for us in logging. Inside this, I'm going to have log, and I'll put required string tag required string message. Now I'm going to take the import for my Dart developer and as developer, and using this developer I'll try to log the details. Now if you would remember, I want to secure my code with when it is trying to be in the debug environment. I do not want to log the details on the console window. Next, what I'm going to show you is how this kdebug mode is going to help us in securing our app by not printing the details on the console window. Well, this kdebug mode shall ensure that only if we are into the debug mode, then this log statement gets printed. Otherwise, let's say the moment we upload the app to Play Store or App Store, it's going to be something called as production mode, and hence no log statements shall get printed. Now over here, what I'm going to try and do is create an object for my logger utils and also a tag variable that helps me track which is the class file that's actually writing this logs. Next, I'm going to have my future get, or in fact I would want to see this hit server for getting products, and I'll mark it as async. Well, the term hit server basically says my app would be reaching out to the server and then getting the list of products. Well, in this case, I am going to have my string API URL, and that would be storing the URL which we have got over here. I'll copy this and paste it inside my API URL variable. Now, when it comes to the API request part, what I am going to do is take the import for my http dart package, and then over here I'll see http dot get. So it's talking about the URL. I'll put URI dot parse and just mention the URL. Well, what's exactly that I have done here? That basically means that this URL is one of the uniform resource identifiers into my app. Now, if things go good, I will be having the status code to be 200. So let's see, I'll put over here that from my response, I want to know the status code. If yes, if this is 200, then I'll be very confident that my app works perfectly fine. What I'll next do is try to erase each and every piece of code that came by default. Next, in my view, I'll create my home screen, or in fact, let me keep this as product listing screen. So the class product listing screen would extend the stateless widget. I'll take the missing override. Well, this screen is going to be fairly simple, as it's going to have a scaffold, and at the center of the screen I'm going to have a button, let's say a filled button, and what that filled button is going to do is try to call this function which we created just now. Which function? This product repository in which we have this hit server for getting products, this particular function. Here we are inside the on press. I'll see product repository, so here's my repository object, and I'll use this repository object to call my function hit server for getting products. Next, inside the text, I'll just put this as a test button. That's because the usage of this is only for testing purpose. Next, as you would have seen in all the previous modules, my app would still extend my stateless widget. Then over here, I'll try to mention my material app. Well, we still would kind of stick to the material design pattern. And then on the home screen, I'll see that I want to show my product listing screen. Now, let me remove this const from the widget test and run the app from the very beginning. It says hot restart, So here's my app that's going to have one button, test button. And now when I click on this, it shows status code 200. That's it. Well, what this basically means is I was able to reach to the server according to this diagram. I was able to reach to the server and also get a response back. If everything went well, it's going to be 200. Let me prove it to you by deliberating keeping a different URL. So let's say we head over to the repository and put over here something called as products123. Now when I do a hot restart and click on the button, well, this time the status code says 404, which basically means this particular URL does not exist. In fact, if I would copy it and put it on the Chrome website, it still is going to show to me the exact same 404 website. Now, basically, what do you understand? If it is 200, then things have gone well. If it is not 200, then we are going to have some kind of an error, and that exactly the entire error handling will try to split into the next video. Hopefully the entire demonstration wherein you got to know about the JSON structure and how to resolve it into the app was very clear. In fact, the product model is going to get frequently used when our product listing or the entire details in which the list view which shows all the products shall be getting used in very much detailed manner. Perhaps all the variables will be used at that point in time when we are entirely displaying the data on the view. In the next session, we intend to teach to you how the mobile request and the response can be handled. So stay tuned and keep learning with open minds.